All right, I'm gonna get started. Today is March 3rd, 2022, and this is the third stakeholder meeting for the Office of Public School Construction on the facility inspection tool. We'll look at today. The plan is to look at OPSC's updated proposed revisions to the facility inspection tool. Our goal today is kind of reach finalization on our proposal, and that way everyone kind of has a heads up of what we plan to present to the state allocation board at one of the future upcoming meetings. Currently, we're targeting the April board meeting, but we'll index that as we come along there. We've had, this is, as I mentioned, this is our third stakeholder meeting. We've had two so far. Our first one was November 30th, and the second one was January 20th. If you want to look at OPSC's prior proposals, those agendas are available on OPS's website. Links are available in the agenda item for today. And also viewing of those webcasts too, if you want to look at the prior discussions. We have both of those stakeholder meetings on our YouTube page, so you can browse those as well. Since the January 20th meeting, we did have a few more comments and feedbacks, and we've also taken into consideration all the feedback provided at the second meeting. And we've worked those into kind of what we have now is a more finalized approach to proposing what we do, thinking for the fit. So we want to walk through those ones with you. So I'm going to share a screen with you guys, and we can go through them one by one. Okay, there we go. All right, so if you want to follow on to the changes, the page I'm sharing right now is stamp page 19 of the agenda. And we kind of talk about these on stamp page 3. So the first one has to do with the instructions for cleanliness. I'm hearing a lot of feedback from the last two meetings on the difficulty and challenges of quantifying the number of staff, but from the custodial and maintenance standpoint. We've updated instructions and the forms to move those categories over to the cleanliness page of the spreadsheet. And we have those up here in the top left on page 22. And we also updated instructions. Given that the fit is an optional document, we want to make it as user-friendly as possible. So what we've done is we moved those to the optional pages, and we've added clarifying instructions for all users to how to fill those out. And we've left it open for school districts. So should you choose to use the optional page, you can list the number of district staff assigned to a site. You can list the amount of staff from a district-wide perspective. You can use full-time equivalents. It's up to the district to explain, to give the reader perspective on how many people are working at the site or working for the district to work on this cleanliness detail and just the fit and overall repair standards in general. So we left it pretty broad, and rather than just tie it to one specific number without any explanation. So it gives a little more options for the school districts there. Before I move on, any questions with that particular item? Again, so you updated instructions, and I'll zoom in a little bit here for the form if you don't have it up in front of you. But leave it kind of broad. So districts welcome to expand on that, add comments that they need to whatever methodology you want to use, or because this page is optional, you could leave it. You could just skip this page altogether. So it's up to the districts how much information they want to provide. All right. The other change we had on the instructions based on everyone's feedback was a little more clarity on the instructions for the various categories. So on the cleaning page, we talk about sinks being clean and drains working properly. We didn't get any feedback or any precise numbers where, as it regards to hot water specifically and temperatures, besides cooking and cleaning facilities in the kitchens where temperatures may be required and they're set. But as far as sinks in bathrooms available for students, we're not getting back any information where it needs to hit a required temperature. We've also received feedback from users that measuring temperature and doing all that is a challenge too from the visual aspect of the fit as it was designed. So we kept the instructions more simple for checking as a inspector walks the campus. Do the sinks work? Are they clean? And the other instructions we simplified was landscaping. as it ties to clean, repair, and safe? Is it maintained sufficiently to not hinder students and staff? That way, we're not dealing with the point in time issues of rain and mud and potential flooding. It's just in general, how's the campus seen from that perspective? So a little more broad answer on that one. All right. Moving on to the next page. In our last proposal, we had this highlight in yellow at the bottom of every section for every building. We got feedback from users, and we kind of agree. If you have that section at the bottom of every single building, the information can get buried, or you could be doing a lot of repetitive information. If the school district has a master plan that all these fixers, hey, we're doing this network next year, it's easier if we just summarize at the bottom, or the district can choose to address the individual building components and prior deficiencies at once at the bottom of the sheet. So you move to the bottom more as a summary for the page versus every individual row in the document. Try to keep it simpler. All right. We also did the same box. We moved it down to the bottom of the cleanliness page as well for the same reason. So same concept on both. All right. And then the last thing that came out of the stakeholder meeting was the use of letter grades. We did kind of a quick informal live poll at our last meeting. And for those that were on the meeting, we came out with larger favorability on the keeping the letter grades versus the no's, 17-9. So we kind of merged them together and proposed this as an option to hit a middle ground there. And I'm going to zoom in on that page too. So we tried to group them into categories. The fit already scores each of the individual categories. It also rolls it up into an overall score. And because the fit and the statute require us to use the poor, fair, good, and exemplary standards for determining the overall rating of a school, we've basically converted those into more common letter grades. We still show the exemplary, but we'll just show an overall letter grade as a quick visual tie-in. For now, we've chosen to use exemplary as A+, good as an A, fair B, C, and poor D, F for those. So if a facility was to be rated poor in this overall grade category, you would see a D/F. We're not picking one or the other. We're just trying to give the reader a general concept of what the grade for the facility would be as a whole. All right. Joanne, you have a question?
Two things. One is F should be reserved to a catastrophic fail. Poor is not fail. So my recommendation on that would be A+, AB, BC, and D. No F. F is only if you have that R, that big bad R, I think it is, or D, deficient, the D. So I don't think an F should be on poor. And the second thing is on the form that you were scrolling down really quick on above this one, where you said how you're going to fix it. I don't want you to change the size of it. Definitely use additional area lines as necessary. I would rather, or attachments, attach an explanation. Because, instead of just use additional area lines as necessary.
I see what you're saying.
Say use additional available space on here. You're going to make an ugly form that no one can read. So I don't know. Attach a piece of paper. An additional page, because I think there will be a nice explanation from the district on how they want to address it, and it may, in fact, not be able to be filled out that day on site. It might be something that needs to be attached before the fit is finalized.
Thank you. Yeah, and we could probably put something in the comments to that effect too. If the one row is not enough, you can type C attached.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm teeing off exactly what Joanna just said. I'm wondering if maybe it might be helpful just to have like another section or another page at the very end or near the end of all those comments so that you can see them all in one spot. Or did you already cover that in a previous meeting?
No, we did expand at the bottom of this. It's on stamp page 23. We had inspectors' comments and ratings and explanations prior, but we didn't have a district response report. So we did add that bottom for anything the district wanted to speak to on the reports, whether it be time of day issues, whether unique circumstances. They could freely type anything they wanted to do to address the inspectors' comments. Well,
Joanne's right, though. If it goes on each page and if we have to attach other pages, that's great. I just would hate to see it get lost in, a high school or a middle school that takes, 20 pages to do.
Gotcha.
I'll lower my hand.
All right. So that's all that came out of since the meeting and during the last stakeholder meeting. We wanted to open up for anybody to any other comments and concerns they want us to address before we potentially take this to the state allocation board meeting. If there is additional things that we need addressed, we would like to do it in a stakeholder meeting before we get to the board so that we can give the board a clean document that they can approve and accept for use by everyone before June 30th. So if you have comments, feel free to raise your hands and we can call out you. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so this may have been addressed in a previous stakeholder meeting. I'm sorry, I'm just now getting into this, but it is important, and I'm thankful to be given a voice in this. Was it already addressed in previous meetings about the weight of these scoring and the tabulations in prior meetings?
Yeah, we in the first meeting, we walked through the fit as a whole and how the scoring works. So we did talk about how the individual categories you rate into deficient, working, and extreme deficiency, and how those based on those ratings, those all get rolled up into this master document.
Right, yeah.
And based on the percentages, yeah. So the weighting comes into the grouping. So in systems, there's 3 categories versus interior having 1 category.
Correct.
Which means the ones with less categories tend to have a higher weighting because of that, because the rest can get divided up. From that, we didn't get a lot of comments on that. Well, on that perspective, whether we should change it though.
Yeah, from my perspective, and I do a lot of these inspections, I have 22 school sites that I have here at our district, which is a lot less than some districts and a lot more than other districts. At my last district, I had about half the amount of schools. So I'm very familiar, use this form quite a bit. And that therein lies one of the problems is the weight that's given, for example, to the interior, as opposed to the weights given to everything else. Because I understand interior surfaces are very important, but sometimes the amount of damage to interior may be very minor, but still may be a deficiency. And so let's say I use this example quite often. You have a school that's a few years old. It's by and large a brand new school, but there may be some chip laminate in each of the classrooms, because kids like to pick at things. So, you tally up all of the chip laminate and you get a pour in that category for all of the indoor surfaces. And I suppose that could be dependent on the person who's doing the inspection, their level of, meticulousness with it. But it tends to bring, so you have a brand new school that shows poor in that category because there isn't anything else to weight it with. And roofs is kind of another one of those examples. If you have a lot of stained ceiling tiles, it kind of drags down in that area. But interior surfaces is one that's really hard to get anything, even on a brand new school to try to get a good score in it. And especially if the school's small. Let's say you have a school that's only got 8 classrooms and each one of them have some form of a torn tack surface, albeit small or something of that nature. You're almost always looking bad in that category when the school is otherwise in great shape. You know, corridors, interior surfaces are good, restrooms. I try to mitigate that by trying to, see if I can put that in some other category sometimes when it kind of might be able to justify it, just so that my score doesn't take such a big hit on the interior surfaces sometimes. But anyways, just that's my own experience with the scoring and the weighting of this.
Yeah, thank you. I'd be interested to hear what other users of the FIT think about those comments. From my perspective, for interior surfaces, things like the chip counters wouldn't even appear on the FIT for a rating system. On the instructions, it's tied more to things that would be identified as hazards to students. So the torn carpeting that could be tripped hazards, missing tiles, evidence of water leakage, those kind of things. But what other people think? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. David hit it right on the head. It really depends on the meticulousness or the pickiness of the person doing the inspection. We've had some down here in Stateholder County where a person has just been an absolute, fit Nazi to where there would be pencil, markings of possible graffiti in a bathroom on something I just painted. And that would make a pour on the whole thing. And she would do that for other stuff. So things that you or I or other maintenance people wouldn't really include on a FIT, they would. And so I agree, there should be a little bit less weighting on some stuff. I really don't know how to get there from here, but it does drag down things. It just depends on who's doing the inspection and how picky it is.
Thank you. Anthony.
Hey, Mike, how are you? I just got a question on I'm looking at number 7 and number 11. Isn't that the same?
On the cleanliness instructions on the right side?
Yeah. Is there, am I missing something?
I think this was tied to 7 could be your general sinks in the classroom versus the one specific to the bathrooms. Some schools have those built into the classrooms on their counters or their workstations, science labs maybe. So not necessarily tied to the bathrooms.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else? So we can go back and look at it. We can see if there's anything we could recommend potentially on the scoring and weighting. That'll get a little more complicated in how you would break it down from a percentage standpoint, and how much should it be worth compared to other parts of the FIT. And another consideration is where do kids spend the most time too, in the classrooms versus these other areas too, potentially. I had a suggestion in regards to the grading system, if there's a preference between maybe we have B, C, and C, D, or just B, C, and D, if there's a preference that way. Let me see if I can stop a screen share for that one. Let me see if I can create a poll really quick. No. All right, well, we can do this as a show of hands. Let me put in chat option 1 versus 2. Ryan, did I capture your thought there?
Yes.
So I put in the chat there two options, option 1, option 2, that we can kind of get people's general feedback on. If we move C down to combine it with D, if we're getting rid of F, what people thought about that as well. So you still have 4 rankings with A+ being exemplary, good being an A, and B, C. So let's do Barbara, are you able to create it?
I think so. Just 1 second. I'm almost there.
Okay, we'll come back to that. While we're waiting for that, Anthony, you want to go ahead and add comments? Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, no comments at this time.
Okay. Kim?
Hi, so I just want to be clear, like we're removing F altogether. Is there not a catastrophic situation which might be like this school needs help like in the immediate? I'm unclear. Like I would think F is concerning, like significant, like cause for alarm. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to like it being for catastrophic, to Joanne's point, but is there not a scenario, like if a school can be exemplary, it certainly can be catastrophic. So I am concerned with us just like eradicating F and not leaving an option where we're like sound the alarms. We're very, very concerned with like the health and well-being of children that are attending this school. So I just don't know if I feel comfortable like why we would eradicate it. There has to be scenarios where we would have concerns.
Right. In the case of like a gas leak, in this, where is gas leak? This first column in systems under A, if there was a gas leak, the system would automatically be in the sheet pre-calculates it as an extreme deficiency, and its entire category, even though there's HVAC and sewer in there, they would all be considered poor. And then you can see we have 8 categories across the bottom. That poor would pull the other 7 down, but they still might hit a good rating from a percentage standpoint. So yeah, that would be a way to sway it basically without that category in there. You should see a pop-up on your screen with a poll where you can select what you tend to favor in terms of how the grades would rank, going from exemplary, good, fair, poor. If we were to throw in an F in there, only have the A through D, but not have F by default in the exemplary, good, fair, poor, we would need a criteria for what would trigger an F rating then, if it's not one of these 4 categories. So far, we have 18 people vote. We seem to be pretty evenly 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split. All right, still got a few more people answering. All right, I think that's it, huh, Barbara?
Yeah, not seeing any more answers coming in. Anybody else? We're gonna end it. The poll. not the meeting. All right, I'm gonna end it.
Then you can
The
share
results
theirs.
come up?
Oh. Can you guys see their scores? Here, I'll unmute you, Cassie. You can see it. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, you had said before that we would have to create a new category if we went with F, that we just divide it based on the percentages that are already there, just anything that's maybe less than 50 or 60%.
Kim.
I'm just wondering if like this, I'm not opposed to creating a new category because again, like what Joanne said in the chat, like I just want us to have like the availability if there is a scenario where they're like the school needs to be closed in the immediate. It's not impossible. Like if we find like rat droppings and leaks and like dirt that's like indicative of like, you know, I just think that we have to like have a worst case scenario, and like obviously we always try to avoid it, but there's a lot of ways that the rating system won't have an adverse effect, but you know, prepare for that. And I just wish like I'd like to discuss that further because I feel like D's not failing, D's not good, but D's not failing. And like F is like, I think if we're gonna do letter grades and we're gonna give out an A+, we also have to be realistic that some schools are also an F. And I just want to make sure that like we don't have this false sense of all schools are passing though. They're not great, but they're passing. And that just gives me concern when there's no category that can say like this needs immediate intervention. So if it needs to be a more significant like alarm to get F, I think that's fine, but I still think that there should be metrics in there for that kind of consideration. Because otherwise, for me, the letter grades give like a false sense of success.
In the chat, Tom kind of makes a good point that I think is worth considering. If something's so dire, let's say you have a gas leak, school district is probably going to jump right on top of that instantly, right? First priority in the entire district if it was that bad. So from a point in time aspect of rating how safe is the facilities, you know, in theory, that gas leak is fixed the same day. And if you're not doing that inspection that particular day, then on that particular day you do the inspection, you're not going to have gas leak where you're going to mark it as an extreme deficiency. So on that day, you wouldn't be able to give it an F. But from an overall rating facilities perspective, maybe there isn't something that would be an F because anything that's that bad, you're addressing instantly. Joanne.
I would say that in my experience, I have gone one time to a site during a fit and they had a gas leak and they had not arrived yet. And we were finishing and they had emptied that area and the fire department was in the street and it was happening. But my thing was there's a gas leak. It only happened once. We are not there to close a school. That's for DSA, that's for health department, that's for other people. These are lay people investigations. I don't think we have the ability to say, close the school. So if you say anything less than poor, which by the way, on the current scale goes to 0%, which is awkward, but 0%, that means 0 score and you get a poor. If we still believe that 0% gets a poor, then we stop talking. If there's some lower amount that if it goes below that, we feel that some attention should be brought to it. And I think potentially between 74% and 0, there's a scale there. I don't know that we'd call it fail or an F. The F is what's bothering me. I don't like the letter grades. Students don't like the letter grades. Parents don't like the letter grades. We've gotten rid of the letter grades and here we're bringing it on a form in a school. That's ridiculous. But anyway, I digress. Fail is a big deal. That means they have to close the school. And now we're engaged as a fit walkthrough person in that. Is that really where we want to go, people? So if you have something a little less than a D minus, I would go with a D minus. I don't want an F on here. I don't think it's my responsibility as a fit inspector to do F. I can recommend as my recommendation that they bring in the fire department, they bring in CDE, or they bring in CDE, they bring in DSA, and they bring in the health department. I can recommend that, but I can't fail them. That's me. Sorry.
See, Kim.
Again, like I think a gas leak's optimistic. I'm thinking rat droppings in communal like classrooms, like signs of like rot, like neglect, things that have compiled over time. And so if it's not an immediate, like we're not saying you have the ability to close it, but I do think if you can't fail, it's not, and if you're saying health department needs to come in, fire department needs to come in, those are alarms. Those are, you're not failing them, but you're signaling that the next authority needs to. And so again, like if we're gonna do letter grades, if we're gonna do A, B, C, D, there has to be a fail too, where we're saying they did, if it goes to 0%, that's a fail. Like if there's signs of neglect where there needs to be intervention in the state authorities or an entity needs to step in, that's not a D, that's an F. And this is my only concern is like, D's get degrees, F means intervention. So for me, I'm like, I'm not comfortable with us giving a 0% or like a low percentile a D. I just think it gives like a false sense of like, okay, we need to go to this site. We need to like see what's happening. It needs to be reviewed, but there's not an immediacy there. If there's an F and you're like, I can't believe nobody has said something sooner, like that, like it gets filed and if it flags, an F is going to flag attention. I'm not saying it's the fit inspector's responsibility, but if they see something that concerning that they're failing a school, they should be able to.
All right, anyone else want to weigh in? Dale.
So, yeah, I'm kind of the opinion too, that if a fit inspector sees something that is that obvious that needs attention, it needs to be dealt with. You can't just sweep it under the carpet. They may not be an expert on it, but if there's some termite damage that's been painted over and you've got a beam that needs to be looked at and it's obvious that it's starting to sag. I've seen some of that stuff at schools. Those kinds of things need to be dealt with. And I'm not saying that the fit inspector is the person to make the call, but certainly if it hasn't been dealt with and they see something that's obviously wrong, it should be brought to the attention and somebody should deal with it. So maybe the F isn't the way to do with it, but there needs to be something. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Joanne.
We were in the chat just talking about using the letter X, which is already in the form, as a thing. We're not inventing a new thing. F indicates failure. We're not making a judgment call on failure, but we're saying this is extreme. This is a thing. There's a thing here, but then we're gonna, if we go that route, we're going to have to determine, just like a couple of years back, we had to determine what would be an A+. And it was only a matter of a couple percentages at the very top of the list. So would the extreme be a matter of only a couple of percentages at the very bottom of the list to be fair to the A+? Or would we want to use something, whether we call it an F or we call it an X, what we're really talking about is a portion of that lower part that gets separated out. Okay, so if we have some consensus from that little ad hoc tests that we did on the ranges that we, potentially want no F, that's one thing. But if we're moving towards, hey, we want something to say there's a big hairy gorilla in the room, I like X better than F. And then we'd have to decide what percentage if we went there.
Bidnick.
Thank you, Lance Bidnick.
Lance, thank you.
So a question that I have, you don't get bonus points for being exemplary. So, the good repair standard is that school facilities are maintained in good repair, not in exemplary repair. So, Joanne, you made reference to not really being able to walk back on the exemplary rating. Is there a reason why we would want to keep that versus typical nomenclature is good, fair, poor, critical?
Go ahead, Jan.
Lance, the only thing I can think of is that, and other people probably have this history better than I, but as I recall, when we rolled the form out, there was a big ruckus over these few districts that just felt they were exemplary. And they pushed so hard that we were forced over the edge to do a gimme where if you could get to all the way up to near 100, and to be honest, I never seen one, but they're out there. I don't know who's lying, but there you go. They got pushed to do it. And I think those same constituents with that same amount of money and pressure in politics would come back at us. That's about the only reason I didn't suggest it. It's not doing any harm sitting there. It gives us, maybe something to pray for at some future point, but and those few people that are using it would be horrified if it was taken away. It's only politics, Lance.
Yeah, and then Lance, in statute, and it's in the item cited in there, but we're required to use those 4 categories: exemplary, good, fair, and poor in statute. So to be able to add another category, we'd have to go back and evaluate even if we're allowed to do that. But statute says grade it in one of these 4 categories. Go ahead, Jan.
So a lack of grade would be an X, and that way you would not be deviating from statute. Just a thought. And we don't even have to call it anything if that's the case. We could avoid the statute concern. We could say, this was so bad it did not get rated X. And that could be the equivalent of the A+ for the fail. If there is a fail, we have a place for it. It's called an X, and it's beyond and past anything in statute to rate these people. It's so bad, it's unrateable.
We'd still have a school rating though. If you're using the FIT scoring criteria, it'd still pop up as a poor school rating. You just want to have a letter grade then, right? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Any other comments? I don't think there be, well, conversation is a difficult one on letter grades and how it might work. We did there when we did the informal poll, and granted we have different attendees, and last time we had about what was it, 17-9 saying yes, they wanted letter grades. It seems like today's conversation is tilting away from that that vote from last time. I don't know. Cassie.
I think that I kind of agree with Kimberly in that I don't want to create this false idea that there is no such thing as failing. And I feel like X is just a weird way of saying failing without saying failing. So I think that I would rather like not even see the letter grades, but just maybe find a way to emphasize that percentage score more and like make sure that's bolded a little bit more on the fit, and then keep the standard way of exemplary, good, fair, poor, as long as that there's some sort of way of making sure that users can easily see the percentage that a school got.
Tom.
Yes, thank you. Whoops, sorry. The I know this is my first meeting. I've not been able to attend the others, but I'd like to shy away from the letter grades. These FIT reports, when they get passed, they go to the SARC meetings and so forth. They get awfully political, and in the school environment, an F really means failing, and A means this. It gives a falser sense, rather than staying with the current categories and just saying, "Hey, these are poor, and here's a percentage." If something does in the middle of the report get an X designation, let's say for HVAC or roofing, that's going to call out. It's going to really drop everything down from there. So you will have a poor grade anyway that needs to be addressed somehow before the next thing. I just kind of want to shy away from that because it can get very political and very contentious and really unnecessarily cause grief.
So one idea could be, instead of having A plus A, B, C in this box, we can put the percentage, because the percentage is already calculated by the sheet and it'll spit out somewhere between 0 and 100. So we can have the exemplary, good, fair, poor here, and then whatever the percentage tied to that. So if they are, say, in a poor school rating, if we list the percentage right here, the user won't have to guess, is it 74.99% or is it 0%? You know, that might be kind of a middle ground there.
Yes, I like Joanne's comment about 0% would be great too if something really rates 0.
Yeah, and the way this sheet works, you would have to get 0%. You basically have to hit poor in all 8 categories.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, why don't we try a vote just from another perspective, just for the people that don't want to talk orally. How about a thumbs up versus a thumbs down in switching? Well, okay. Maybe Barbara can type another one. Percentage versus letter grades. Hurry up.
Too many buttons. Hang on. Give me just a second.
Go ahead, Kim.
I'm so sorry. I got disconnected. I'm okay. So we're debating now switching from percentages to letter grades. Is that?
Other way, from letter grades to maybe percentages. So
Right,
you can still see perspective. Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that. The only reason I was like, the thing I was going to say before I'm like picking my son up from daycare, my phone died on me. But I feel like a B, C, and D is debatable. Like people might think, oh, that's a gray area. But for me, usually an A and an F are like pretty universally like A is good, F is bad. And percentiles can be like unclear. I do think that there is clarity in an A and an F. I think like a C, you're like, that's not so bad. It's average. Like if I had done like just as one thing, I get a B or D. And it's not like, I don't think parents would be happy to see a C or a D, but I think they'd be thrilled to see an A and very concerned to see an F. And that the only reason, like, if I do think that there is, for an outsider layman understanding it, it's just that like I do think that there's like universal, like it's like pass or fail basically, you know, like B, C, and D, you know that there's some metrics that need to be improved, but like an A or an F, you know, if where you are.
The extremes, right? Not working? Let's see. I could do it, Barbara. You typed them in, right, too? Oh, wait, you got 2 questions in there. You only intended 2, right, Barbara? Letter grade and highest percentage?
Yep.
Yeah, I can launch it. But you only need to answer question 1. You don't have to answer the second one since it's a repeat. Oh, thanks, Joanne. Didn't know that. Somebody did not pick the same answer for 1 and 2.
Couldn't decide, right?
That means neither, huh? Or both. All right, I think that stopped, huh? All right, here I'll share the results. There you go. So it looks like people generally like the percentage. All right. All right. So we'll take that back, OPSC, and we'll consider that, look into that, and see what our thoughts are about that and how that would work. If it's just a matter of switching out the boxes on the form, we won't have to do another stakeholder meeting for that. But we'd certainly, if that ends up in our final proposal, we would notice the meeting for the state allocation board and publish the agenda at least a week in advance so that people can see where we landed before we actually go to the meeting. But we'll take a look at that as well then. All right. Comments, questions, anything else on the form? Any other sections or things we forgot to come back with? All right. With that, for next steps purposes, we will continue to accept any comments before we take a final item to the board. In the item on page 4 is our communications team email address. If you have any questions or things you'd like to add that you didn't get to add on, or you think of after this meeting, feel free to email us and we can take those in consideration. At present, we're looking for an April board meeting for presenting this to the board. So to be able to do that, we're hoping for all comments by end of day, March 18th, which I believe is a Friday. So if you can email us any comments, concerns, questions, what have you, feel free to do that. We'll work on summarizing all the comments from all 3 meetings, and those will be sent over to the state allocation board in one combined item. And then we will present it there and see where the board goes. All right. If there are no other questions, that will wrap up today's meeting.